All right. Okay, so let's go through the first two together. And if we can, we'll go through the others. Let me share. Well, hold on. There we go. Let me do this. So let me share that now. Here it comes. Yeah, here we go. That's right. Okay, here it comes. Okay, so for the first one, notice that notice that there's a non-zero constant term, right? And again, when that happens with the GCF, that means that you can't factor out a variable. So in other words, I didn't write it here, but your M happens to be 0, in your GCF. And since there's a coefficient of 1, right, you have 8x cubed minus 64x squared plus x. That tells us, minus 8. Well, since the coefficient of 1 is there, that tells us that the greatest common factor among the coefficients and the constant term is also 1. So basically, the GCF is going to be 1. Okay. So after that, we form the two groups, as you can see, right? We put the first two terms in parentheses, and the third and fourth term also in parentheses. Notice also we have addition between the two groups. It's always good to have addition there, and we have that already. Okay. So again, for the first group, we want to find its GCF. So we have 8x cubed minus 64x squared. Well, the smallest exponent of x, right? That is 2. So basically your M would be 2. Now we have also for the coefficients 8 and 64. So 8 is a factor of 64. So that forces 8 to be the GCF. No, excuse me, not 8. 8x squared to be. Basically, 8 is the greatest common factor among the coefficients. So 8x squared is the GCF. So for the next step, what I'm actually doing here is I'm factoring out 8x squared. So we have 8x squared. Then we divide by it, right? And when we divide, again, we divide into each term, and we get what's left over, right? From the first quotient, the 8's cancel. Actually, let me, right? You can see that the 8's here cancel. X cubed over x squared is just x. Here, x squares cancel. And we're left with 64 over 8, which is 8. Good. And x minus 8, remember, when you factor out the GCF, the polynomial that's left over, that's going to have a GCF of 1. So x minus 8, we can't factor any further. So because of that, x minus 8 has a GCF of 1. Not to mention also, you can also see that there's a coefficient of 1. So the greatest common factor among the coefficient and this constant term is going to be 1. There's also a non-zero constant term. So the smallest exponent of x is 0. So the GCF is going to be 1 times x to the 0, which is just 1. Now, so we have these two groups from above, right? And now we factored out the first group to get 8x squared times x minus 8. Notice we have x minus 8 and x minus 8 here, right? So we're going to factor that out. We put it in front, but we also have to see what's left over. And so we're dividing. And of course, you divide into each term. And when you divide into each term, the x minus 8s here are going to cancel. You're left with x squared, 8x squared. And when you have something divided by itself, you have a 1. So we get x minus 8 times 8x squared plus 1. Okay. Let's see. Are there any questions about that? All right, let me do the next one. So now we have this one here. Well, again, there's a non-zero constant term, right? So x is not in every term. Or in other words, the smallest exponent of x is 0. So in the GCF, m would be 0, and we only look at the coefficients and the constant term. Okay. I mean, you could list all the factors of 12, of 2, of 30, and 5. You could do that if you want. But if we just look at 2 and 5, the factors of 2 are just 1 and 2. The factors of 5 are 1 and 5. Those two alone only have a common factor of 1. So the only common factor, in fact, among all the coefficients and the constant term must be 1. So the greatest common factor among the coefficients and the constant term is 1. And so the GCF is 1. So just like before, what do? We form these two groups. Notice what I did also was the minus here, right? Between the second and third term, subtraction, I changed that into addition to adding the negative. Okay? I changed that to addition. Now I can make the two groups because I want addition there. That makes it easier. Also, the second term here, right, has a plus. The fourth term here, minus 5, those signs are opposite. So eventually in the second group, we will have to factor out a negative. We will have to. So for the first group, the smallest exponent of x is 2, right? 2 is a factor of 12. In other words, the only factors of 2 we know are 1 and 2, but 2 is a factor of 12. That tells us 2 is the greatest common factor among the coefficients in this group. So the GCF of this group alone is 2x squared. So we factor it out. That's what I'm doing. Factor it out, meaning we divide it into each term. Okay. And what happens? Well, from the first quotient, 12 over 2 is 6. X cubed over x squared is x. 2x squared over 2x squared, they cancel, so we get 1. Are there any questions so far? I mean, I really hope everyone understands this. I really do. All right. Okay, so we also have minus 30x minus 5. Remember, let me scroll back up. That was the second group. Okay, so let's handle that. So again, the smallest exponent of x is 0 because we have a non-zero constant term. 5 is also a factor of 30. You know, if you were to list the factors of 30, what would you get? You would get 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 10, 15, and 30, I think. But either way, you get 5 as a factor. So the greatest common factor among the coefficients in the constant term is 5. So the GCF is 5. But again, we have to factor out a negative, right? We saw that earlier. So we factor out negative 5. We factor out negative the GCF. That's what I'm doing here. Not just the GCF, negative the GCF. See? So here we have negative 30x over negative 5. That's positive 6 times x. Sap and sun rules. Here we have minus 5 over negative 5. Sap and sun rules again, that's plus 1. And this is good because now we have 6x plus 1 in both groups, right? The same thing in parentheses. So we're going to factor that out, as you can see. Pull it out in front. I mean, when you're writing this up on an exam or something, let me see if I can get to it. These two steps you could probably skip. I'm including these so that everyone understands, but if you can visually see that when you pull out the 6x plus 1, you're left with 2x squared plus negative 5, that's fine. You could write it up that way. I'm just trying to show all the steps so that I hope everyone understands. But when you do factor, what you're really doing is you're dividing to see what's left over. And to divide into a sum, you have to divide into each term in the sum. And of course, when you do that here, the 6x plus 1's cancel. They're on top of each other. Same thing here. So you get 2x squared plus negative 5. And if you stop here, that's fine. So, but it's really 2x squared minus 5. But this is the answer, though. Actually, that should be x squared. Let me fix that. No, wait, that should be, no, that was right. I'm sorry. My mistake. That should be 6x, not 6x squared. There we go. My mistake. Okay. I will post these solutions. I really hope everyone understands. So, I mean, we're out of time now. But again, if you have questions or concerns, don't be afraid to email me. I'm here to help you.